My guess is that you're going to see the down ballot effects of the low Trump approval ratings in November.
Dr. Nicole Caleb-Hughes joining us from Bowling Green State University this evening. We'll be seeing you throughout the evening. Thank you for your input so far. And we can say that just 45 seconds ago, the polls closed around the state of Ohio. Unless there was a line and people were in that line, they'll get a chance to vote. But polls are officially closed right now across Ohio. We expect to start getting results pretty quickly because they will be processing and now tabulating all of the absentee and early votes that came in. So those could come in pretty quickly. And we'll go back to Lena at the big board to see how those results are coming in. But this is our Ohio Votes coverage. We will be right back in just a... No?
No, we'll go to Lena.
Oh, we're going to keep going. All right.
We get more. We can't possibly
have it. Great, yeah. So we're going
to... We can keep talking. Amy Acton's going to talk soon.
Okay, the voice you're hearing in the background is our producer, Zenobia. Just so you know, she's giving us some instruction here which direction we need to go this evening. But yes, it is now 7:30. Polls are closed, and we are looking at waiting for the results, I guess.
So let's go back to Lena, because I think earlier we had a little bit of trouble with her microphone. And so I think let's go over to her and find out what this big board is going to look like, what it's going to turn into next. Lena.
I want to touch upon an interesting storyline. Let's talk about the shape of this election and what might be considered an underappreciated storyline here, which we like to call Ohio's GOP musical chairs. And what is happening here is that all 5 of Ohio's top executive office holders are term limited. All 5 of them, all Republican, all heading out the door at the same time. We're talking governor, attorney general, auditor, secretary of state, as well as treasurer. And what is interesting is that with the Republicans, they're not recruiting any new blood. Instead, they're more or less reshuffling the deck, if you will. And the first domino that fell is, of course, Governor Mike DeWine. Term limited, and so he is retiring. So what we saw is that Attorney General Dave Yost, he saw the governor vacancy and initially ran for governor, but you remember he withdrew after the Republican Party backed Vivek Ramaswamy. And then you have Auditor Keith Faber seeing the AG office being vacant and deciding to go for that. Faber does have a legal and political background. And then now we're talking here, Secretary of State Frank LaRose. He sees auditor being vacant, so then he decides to run for, I accidentally touched that. He decides to run for auditor. Now, his biggest critics are saying that he does not have any auditing experience. We will talk to him later on tonight. We hope to have him in studio, correct? We will talk to him and ask him about that. And then finally, the last office for treasurer, you have Robert Sprague running for Secretary of State because he sees the vacancy over there. So basically you have this reshuffling of the deck, and the office for treasurer is truly the only open seat tonight and is facing a very tight contested Republican primary tonight. But for everywhere else, it really just depends on which Republican lands in whichever chair. Back to you guys.
The musical chairs, Lena, for sure. That's a great analogy for how that's shaping up. And we're going to talk to our experts about that in a second. But I understand right now that District 3 U.S. Congressional Representative Joyce Batty, running for her 8th term in office. She's been serving, I believe, since, 2012?
Sounds right.
Or 2013. She's at the podium right now. Let's listen into a little bit from Representative Joyce Batty.
We are in the most consequential time in our lifetime. When people ask you, why are you voting? You have to tell them because everything is on the table. You have to tell them that we are fighting because we know that people's prescriptions are costing more. They know their health care premiums have gone up. They know that this election is really about affordability. People go to the grocery stores and they see that the price of food is not affordable. They get their mortgage or their rent, and those prices have also gone up. So I am telling you, you must go out and vote as you did today. Because today is the beginning. But when we get to November, everything is on the line for all of us. Let me share this with you. People might not remember what you did. People might not remember what you said. But people...
And that is Representative Joyce Batty, District 3, here basically in the Columbus-Franklin County area. We're now joined by Dr. David Niven from the University of Cincinnati, political science professor, as well as Dr. Brianna Mack from Ohio Wesleyan this evening. I want to go back to what Lena was talking about, the musical chairs within the constitutional office holders. Does that happen all the time?
It happens a lot in Ohio, and it happens in large part because it's hard to build a statewide name. You know, it's hard to come in, from a lower office and introduce yourself to the state. And frankly, a lot of these folks finish as, Keith Faber has done in office, as Frank LaRose has done, as Robert Sprague has done, without any clear idea of what they want to do next. And, for Frank LaRose, for example, he tried to run for the U.S. Senate, didn't win the nomination. So in some sense, these are consolation prizes. Move on to another statewide office. It's a good gig, but it's clearly the second prize to what some of these folks wanted. And Sprague wanted to run for governor. He just pulled back when it didn't look like anybody else wanted Sprague to run for governor.
But it seems like politics at play, at its finest, backdoor deal or something like that, where, you don't get the seat that you really want, or you don't get to go in the race that you really want, so we're going to give you this, or I will take this. Is that pretty much how it goes?
I think so. So the way that I view it, I consider the state to be more so of a incubator ground. Mm-hmm. And so I can see the aforementioned politicians just running for these open seats that are now there, just waiting for another opportunity to try and go up either for the Senate or for a better House seat or even for the governorship.
When you look at just term limits in the state of Ohio, Ohio Governor Mike DeWine is leaving office. Looks like he's not running for anything else. But oftentimes you'll see, whether it's a state senator or a state representative, they serve their 8 years and then they run for the other chamber. And then they'll go back to the other chamber. So do term limits actually exist in Ohio?
They're much more theoretical than real. And we actually had a pair of legislators who flipped seats for 40 years. We have a 40-year legislator in a legislature that theoretically has 8-year term limits. So, the practical reality is term limits are not a hard limit. They're just a challenge to ingenuity. If you're willing to work the system, you can just switch from office to office, and the 8 years clock resets every time you do that. So you can be in the House for 8 years, then the Senate for 8 years, but then that House clock resets.
What do you think about the term limit system here, Dr. Mack?
So this is my first time hearing it more in depth, and so I'm actually sitting here finding it fascinating. And so I just continue to echo what I said before about it being a incubator period, because I think, for residents and for citizens that are now, perhaps being informed that there are folks that are flip-flopping back and forth with the term limits, maybe that will either encourage folks to pay more attention to the state house and to the state senate, or they will actually start to actually hold these individuals more accountable if there are folks that have been in office flipping back and forth longer than I've been alive.
I think it shows you how much power names have within the party.
Absolutely. And, I'll give you the most absurd. There's actually something worse than a legislator having been in office for 40 years in an 8-year term limit, which is a legislator running for the other body, winning, and then declining the seat, which has happened. A legislator thinking, well, should I switch this year or should I wait 2 or 4 years? And so we had one in the Cleveland area, Tim Grendel, who ran to switch bodies, won the seat, and then declined and said, you know what, I'll just stay in the Senate.
But is that because the party decides that that's what he should do, or is that just him making
that
decision?
was him deciding what's in my best interests in terms of lengthening my career. Because on the one hand, ideally, you do 8 years and then 8 years, but if you look on the horizon and you say, well, if maybe I just did 6, this is when the opening is available to me, I'll switch now. So, it's not what term limits, supporters, sold or envisioned. And there are some states with a hard limit, a lifetime limit, but Ohio is not one of them.
And so we'll see if the musical chairs are successful
right.
coming up in November as well. I want to get your thoughts, Dr. Mack, on the gubernatorial race too, as in terms of if Amy Acton wins, she will be the first elected female governor. That would be monumental.
It would be monumental. Fun fact, the first woman governor that was there for 11 years spoke at OWU a couple of years ago. So there's a nice touch there. I think that while
She was 11 days.
11, not 11 years, excuse me. Long day. It's been 11 days, right? And anyways, I think Amy Acton, that possibility of becoming the first woman governor is interesting. However, I think that there is going to be a lot of pushback and a lot of attack ads I see once the general election season starts about, her performance as, our health czar essentially, as well as issues related to like her transition into nonprofits, and there's going to be like a lot of pushback even on her identity as a woman.
And she's never run for office before, so I mean, people have to go on what they know of her. And in Ohio, it does go back to her time, to your point, as the health director during COVID.
Yeah, and I just wanted, you brought it up, Dr. Mack. That was Nancy Hollister, checking my notes. First and only female governor of Ohio. She served 11 days from December 31st of 1998 to January 11th of 1999.